Okay, so hey guys, welcome back to another weekly fighting roundup. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like video if you do indeed like video, and let's get straight into it. So going in, of course, we're going to start off with the boxing news, and starting off, Miguel versus Christian, Kademi, Hussey, Walsh and Cherkov will fight October 4th. Davis is in talks to fight Lemos November 8th, which I think is actually a really good matchup because Lemos, in my opinion, did more than enough, or at least enough to be able to get a draw versus Hitchens. I'm surprised we're not really seeing a rematch, but I suppose it does kind of make sense. But at the same time, you often see fighters that get a decision loss that goes against them, and it was close and they were unfortunate. They then go on and get a another big fight where they get another chance to be able to go up against another top prospect, which often does lead to them then losing. But we'll have to wait and see, because Lemos's style I do quite like, the intensity and everything like that. I am a fan of him, so we will have to see if Davis can handle it. It's definitely going to be a tough test for him. Torma has called out Parker. I don't believe that's going to happen anytime soon. Brathwaite has joined Let's Go Management. Ennis is in talks to fight Norman Jr. November 9th, but that doesn't seem like that's happened anymore. He was in talks, but it seems like Norman Jr., from what Eddie Hearn has said, is asking for too much money, which is kind of frustrated Eddie Hearn, and most likely, well, seemingly removed that opportunity of that fight happening, which I will speak about in just a moment. Poirot is in talks to fight Haney December 7th. I think that is a very good matchup, to be honest. I don't really think Cambosis Jr. is warranted another world title fight straight after a loss as well. I think Haney, he did lose versus Garcia, but everything's gone on around that and everything. I would like to see Haney in with a fair contest. I hope it's a fair contest, and I don't know what happened with Garcia and everything like that, but just a good matchup between two quality boxers, and that's what I'd like to see. And I think Paro versus Haney is that. Davies is set to fight Masood November 2nd. Limond, Gilly, Ali Massi, and Serenka will have joined Queensbury. Whitaker has called out Eubank Jr. That probably isn't ever going to happen. I think it'd be a good fight to make. Like, realistically, both now in their careers, it could be interesting. But when you actually think about the rankings in boxing and the way fighters progress and everything like that, it is just kind of all talk. To be honest, that is never really going to happen. Hernandez versus Garcia and Gomez versus Perez will fight September 11th. WBO have ordered Fundora versus Crawford, in which, to be fair, I think is also a good fight. Fundora will offer something different, which is when you are at the pound for pound level in which Crawford is at, I just kind of want to see you get tested with different challenges. If you can't get the very best to fight you, then different challenges. And the Canelo fight probably isn't going to happen now, from what His Excellency said. Ennis has now got multiple different things going on with him, so why not Fundora? That would be a great fight, I think, and of course for a title as well. So why not? If you're going for undisputed, then you might as well try and actually go through. McIntyre won via TK round 3 versus Matthew. Knight won via split decision versus Stringer. Polkinghorn won via unanimous decision versus Reynolds. Fati won via TK round 2 versus Manuel. Soliman won via split decision versus Brown. Parr won via unanimous decision versus Kai Pawong. Trawella won via unanimous decision versus Jensen. Zarafa won via stoppage round 1 versus Brown. Wallace won via split decision versus Pampayon to become WBO Intercontinental Light Heavyweight Champion. Zhu won via TKO round 9 versus Mazu Dier to become IBF Australian and WBO Intercontinental Super Welterweight Champion. And I mean, it was an interesting card, that one, I suppose. Just to run through a couple of the major talking points. Of course, what happened with Zarafa and Brown was very interesting. Zarafa playing up to that villain type character in which he now kind of has in Australian boxing. He was calling out Zhu as well afterwards, which makes for more of a villain type character because, of course, everybody is loving Nikita Zhu at the moment. But he was saying that he quit and everything to Brown, which was an interesting thing. I mean, I don't necessarily know. I don't know, of course, what happened with the injury and how bad it was or anything like that. But I mean, Zarafa was keen to stir the pot and say he quit and everything like that. Then the coach was coming over and really kind of starting things of Brown. Then all of a sudden, Zarafa's brother jumps in and just smacks him, and yeah, it was a whole thing. Zarafa's brother's now been banned from boxing events from No Limit Boxing, I believe, which is warranted, but also the coach at the same time did kind of start a lot of it. But yeah, that was a whole weird thing. Anyways, Zarafa is gonna probably get this big fight with Zoo now, and Zoo's coming off a good performance there versus Mazoudier. It was so sad to see Mazoudier lose. It's somebody who I've spoke to a while ago on this channel, and it's been interesting to see what's happened with his career. But that was a great fight. He was very tough. Mazoudier to be able to take what he took. Zoo's style was always going to be very gutsy, very just kind of in your face and just letting his hands go. Similar to an extent to that of Tim Tszyu, but maybe a bit less explosive and actually just kind of stood in your face a little bit more. But he has that power. He's shown that, and he's, now got a really big fan base, of course, often just kind of due to the name, but also is really making a name for himself as well now. And like I say, that Zarafa fight would be a really big Australian fight, to be honest. And these Wednesday night boxing or Wednesday daytime boxing, depending, well, in the UK it is, for Australia is entertaining, I suppose. And yeah, No Limits Boxing doing good things. Ramirez vs. Billum Smith, Ramirez vs. Barboza, Zepeda vs. Camboza Jr., Duarte vs. Sims Jr., and Melakuziev vs. Martinez are in talks to fight November 16th. That is Golden Boy's first kind of introduction to a Riyadh season card. Arguably the weakest card that we've seen from Riyadh season so far, but it's getting Golden Boy involved. And to be honest, I never thought I would see the day where you'd see a Golden Boy fighter fighting a boxer fighter in Ramirez vs. Billum Smith. I think that's a very tough fight for Billum Smith, and that would be really interesting to see because, of course, he's been really picked up by boxer and everything. So actually see him get that American testing from a proven world champion, that is going to be interesting. And about time that we're actually seeing world champions go up against each other, and fights which I never thought I would see that fight happen. Fights like that actually being in talks to actually happen and possibly being likely. I think Ramirez vs. Barboza Jr. is a good matchup. Two guys who have got a bit of discredit in the past, but I think that's a good matchup. Zepeda vs. Camboza Jr. is an interesting one. Camboza Jr., like I said, I don't feel like he's deserving of really any big fights nowadays, or at least should step down and have one and then come back. But he keeps getting opportunities, so I suppose money-wise, you don't blame him for keep fighting. But yeah, I think Zepeda goes through him easily. Duarte vs. Sims Jr. I think is an excellent fight, and Melakuziev vs. Martinez will be a good one as well. And in general, like I say, Riyadh season, His Excellency always just taking over boxing currently, which is seemingly a good thing because it's seeming like I say making fights happen. Foster is set to rematch Conceição November 2nd, which is a fight which I'm very excited for because the first fight was very entertaining. Ennis will either move up or rematch Chukadzian. I believe he might be moving up. I don't know if it's been officially confirmed yet, but yeah, it seems like that whole thing with Norman Jr. just kind of went out the window. So yeah, I think he's going to move up to super welterweight, which probably means the Crawford fight will end up happening at some point. If it's past the Fundora fight or not, we'll have to wait and see. Crawford has vacated his WBA World Welterweight title, meaning Stanionis has been upgraded to full champion. And to be honest, with the welterweight division not going less stacked, becoming less stacked, Stanionis could be a champion that stays around for a while because I think he's a very good champion, but he's just not really anybody's got a point to fight him. But now he is proved like an actual world champion. Now I think people might be more interested in fighting him. Molyneux will fight October 19th. Lane won via KO in round 1 vs Kidd. Rio won via unanimous decision vs Rocha. Montgomery won via KO in round 2 vs Escandon. Katurakis won via split decision versus Terry. Adams won via unanimous decision versus Veron. Pierce won via unanimous decision versus San Martin. And just to speak about the main event, that was a good main event. I think I'm enjoying what overtime boxing is doing currently. It's interesting some of the rules that they have with everything, but they're trying to make themselves different, and their Instagram is also entertaining as well, what they're doing on there. And yeah, so in general, I'm here for what overtime is doing, and that was a good fight between Pierce and San Martin. Pierce, in his face, it was one of them phone booth type fights, and yeah, Pierce just threw more. he doesn't really have the style to really be fighting somebody who's going to throw that output back at him, because his low guard would probably have gotten caught a lot. But Sam Martin is always going to be tough, durable, throw quite a lot, make fights close, hardly ever really gets the nod. But yeah, it was another a good fight for Sam Martin. I think I like his like entertaining style, just to be a fringe world level type guy. And Pierce now is ranked quite highly, so we'll have to wait and see what actually happens with him. Cornish won via unanimous decision versus Edwards. DTG won via majority decision versus Minicon. Hamid won via stoppage in round 2 versus Clark. Williams won via TK in round 2 versus Spencer. Dean won via TK in round 3 versus Fogarty. Taylor won via TK in round 3 versus Silver. Tiki Toki won via TK in round 1 versus Fensom. Aaron's drew versus Simpson. And to speak about that Misfits event, just kind of go through my predictions and what I got right, what I got wrong. Edwards actually, I believe, beat Cornish, my bad, and I got that one wrong predictions wise. Unanimous decision. I got my prediction wrong for. I also think Minicon beat DTG. Sorry about this. Yeah, Minicon beat DTG, so yeah, I got that one wrong as well. Hamid, that stoppage versus Clark, I got that one right. It was an interesting type fight. I don't think Hamid looks as good as Adam Hamid, and perhaps that maybe is why he's gone down the Misfits route. But he's going to be somebody I'm going to be intrigued in to see his development. Williams got that one wrong. I think I said Spencer would win that one. Williams, that was a good performance from him. It was a good stoppage. It was early, and it was funny to see Ryan Taylor literally just admitting it was early. Do we think a rematch should be made? Probably not. Well, in my opinion, because I think he was going to win anyway, Williams. But yeah, it was a good performance. I think he's not a bad boxer at all, and he's found his space now. Dean the Great, that was another one in which I got my prediction wrong for. I thought Fogarty would win and kind of upset the odds, and there was one point in which he was looking good. He was throwing a lot, having Dean on the ropes. I don't think Dean's too good at actually just moving off the ropes when he's under pressure, but he knows how to deal with pressure and respond back, and he has power in them hands. And so yeah, he did very well to get the stoppage in which he did, and Fogarty just couldn't recover after getting knocked down the first time, and so that was another big win for Dean. Taylor versus Silver, another one that I got wrong. Taylor, wow, he's actually looking really good now. And, he's not really somebody who I've always been the most keen on his personality or anything in Misfits, but he's been very consistently fighting, and he's fought a lot of the top guys, and he's not shied away from anybody. And he's been winning impressively against most of them, and he's now looking good and better than ever, and has gone from that boring type clinch style in which a lot of fighters use when they don't really want to try and win a lot of the time, but until it's messy. He's just kind of throwing for this like a lot. There's not really too much technique behind it, but he's got that power there, and he's putting it on fighters, and he put it on Silver, and Silver couldn't handle it. And yeah, that was interesting. It's like, say, if he goes up against a proper boxer that can deal with pressure, maybe with and actually counter better, maybe he might struggle. But that was a good one, a good Taylor, and I possibly would like to see him versus Virgo in a rematch now. But I think Virgo's also got a fight in the next Misfits event, so we'll have to wait and see. The HS fight versus Fensom, I mean, I got my prediction right for that one. I think most people would have, everybody was curious to see what HS would have been like if he went into the later rounds or anything like that, but he didn't. Fensom just looked awful. I think he landed one punch, if that, and then he just covered up and just looked like he didn't want to fight at all after getting hit every time. And so, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how HS is progressing, who he might fight next. He called out Zerk, which was a random one, but no, Fensom was awful. And then Aaron's versus Simpson was a good, messy, entertaining fight. Not really too much technique, kind of what I expected. Two guys who haven't really had too long to train. Aaron's, of course, a bit longer, but it takes more than 7 months or 6 or 7 months to be able to learn boxing. You have to actually experience it, and I think he did look a little bit nervous under the pressure and everything like that. A lot of expectation upon him, of course, and that's completely fair, but it wasn't a bad performance in the end from him. They both just were gutsy and sloppy and messy and everything like that. But yeah, it made for a bit of an entertaining main event in which everybody kind of wanted to see. And I mean, I'd like to see him versus Ed Matthews or Weller next. I don't really think a Simpsons rematch is really that warranted, because Simpson isn't really a big name and Misfits isn't really about that. But we'll have to wait and see. Moving on, Nunes won via TKO round 6 versus Mariaga. Pacheco won via split decision versus Valdez to remain WBC Continental American Super Bantamweight Champion. Clark won via majority decision versus Apochi to become WBA Intercontinental Cruiserweight Champion. Fuchs won via split decision versus Ruiz to become WBC Interim World Super Flyweight Champion. And Pacheco won via KO at round 6 versus Solecki to remain WBC USA and WBO International Super Middleweight Champion. And to speak about a few fights on there, Nunes looked, menacing as ever. His power is crazy. It's really interesting to see how his power is just so strong from the sounds of it. Some of the body shots he threw just sounded crazy. And the first knockdown was big knockdown. I'm surprised that Mariaga managed to get up from that, but then he did become a little bit predictable, just doing the same kind of body shot over the head, overhand, and just continuously doing that over and over again. It was becoming a little bit predictable, but then in the end, that body shots were just wearing him down, Mariaga, and I would love to see Nunes now actually get tested in a world level type fight, because with that power, he could really mix things up in the division. So we will have to wait and see. But yeah, I mean, him versus Rocky Hernandez would be a huge fight, and that would be a massive Mexican fight, which I'd love to see. But yeah, we'll get to see that, and at least nice to see him being active. The Apochi Clark fight was an interesting one. I mean, they both got hurt. It was entertaining. Apochi was a bit messier and didn't quite look as good as an actual boxer, but Clark wasn't really landing too cleanly. I mean, he did a little bit, but I think Apoche was probably landing a bit cleaner, especially into the later rounds. It's just one of them fights. I think Clark was always going to get the nod when it was going to be close like that. And now interested to see how Clark progresses, but I think it's another one of them cases where the British fighters go abroad and get exposed at a little bit of what level they are actually at. Fuchs, that split decision versus Ruiz was interesting one. I got that prediction wrong. Not been the best of week prediction wise for me. But Fuchs, I said she had an amateur style, it was a bit too bouncy and stuff like that. But to be fair, the high pace made Ruiz question herself, and Ruiz wasn't really able to keep up. And she had that slapping type jabbing which she started to use, and yeah, Fuchs was just a bit too much for her in that aspect. And I suppose she is improving from what I've seen. I think she looked a little bit cleaner in her work in that fight, and so I would like to see her now go on to fight for a world title, and it'd be interesting to see who she could get. I'd just like her to stay active as well at the same time, not have like a whole year out again. But she is an interesting name to have about, and will provide, I believe, entertaining fights. Pacheco, though, great stoppage versus Sulecki. I got my prediction right. I think I might have said he would have stopped him. I can't remember, but nonetheless, a great stoppage. I mean, was looking very accurate. The uppercut was looking lovely. He was finding his mid-range very nicely. In general, was a better performance from his last performance, in my opinion, and did exactly what he said was a bit of a slow start, and then got into it a lot more. And then that body shot, in which he wasn't, like I say, throwing too many body shots, but when he did, he landed it beautifully, and Sulecki got caught. And Solecki obviously is later on in his career than when he fought Andrade and Jacobs, but that is a very statement win for Pacheco nonetheless. And now Pacheco's now into the mix with them, of course, then Maguias, Bazinian, Mbili, Belanga if he loses. I said Zach Parker as well is possibly even in and around there. So I think the super middleweight division is looking pretty stacked at the moment with some great names, some great fights available, and hopefully we will see them happening. Mercado has joined Matchroom. Matchroom have also signed a long-term partnership with El Mexicano, and that's all the boxing news. Moving on now to the MMA news, in which there is very minimal because there wasn't really any huge kind of MMA event this weekend or this week. So Pereira versus Hernandez and Nicolau versus Alambayev will fight October 19th. Lewis versus Deniz and Romanov versus Nascimento will fight November 2nd, and Cortez will fight Maverick December 14th. And yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed. Like if you did, like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.